Hello and welcome to SatTV Week, the news programme for the international satellite industry. This week, Helen Jameson answers the question, to tweet or not to tweet? We look at Russia's ambitious plans for a new cosmodrome, and we have a report on Thailand's cable and satellite TV market. But first, here's Richard with the news headlines.
Stratos Global has announced the immediate availability of its new BGAN humanitarian pricing plans. The plans offer first responders flexible pricing options for Inmarsat BGAN satellite communication services. According to Stratos President and CEO Jim Palm, most first responder organisations have sufficient local office budgets for the purchase of BGAN terminals. During emergency events such as earthquakes and hurricanes, their satellite airtime is paid by central funds from the agency's headquarters. The new humanitarian pricing plans provide greater flexibility that helps these organisations afford satellite airtime for important BGAN training and testing applications that occur outside of event periods. Globecomm Systems has been awarded an infrastructure contract valued at $2.6 million. Under the terms of the contract, Globecomm will provide a turnkey RF electronics install for multiple telemetry, tracking and control earth stations. Globecomm anticipates the completion of this contract in 2012.
Richard will be back later with more news. Out of all the social media options available to companies, none seem to divide opinion like Twitter. And earlier Richard spoke to Helen Jameson, Satellite Evolution's group editor, and started by asking her about social media marketing methods.
So how should a business start to use social media?
Well, a business can start off, a good place to start is by doing a digital audit, which means you check what social media your company has access to. Now you can do this through Google, and you can find out through Google alerts, any news feeds, any blogs, groups or forums in which you're already involved. Then a good idea is to go and look at your website. Check the website and see whether you could add a blog or links to Facebook or Twitter, for example, and build on from there.
Now, how important is it for a company to allocate a single person who is responsible for all these social media sites?
It's very important because you have to keep on top of what you're putting out there. It's got to be updated on a very, very regular basis, and also that person needs to be somebody of authority as well. So if somebody's blogging or tweeting, then it needs to be of interest to the general public. So you need to make sure that the person that is doing the twittering or updating Facebook is somebody of high status so that they're listened to.
Now, in your view, to tweet or not to tweet?
Oh, definitely to tweet.
Thanks very much, Helen.
Communic Asia 2011. Asia's largest knowledge-based ICT platform is the most recognised one-stop knowledge platform for digital multimedia and entertainment technology.
Now, do you remember what you were doing on June the 3rd last year? Well, one group of people certainly do, as that was the date that the crew of the Mars 500 mission started a simulated 520-day mission to Mars. And they are now just days away from their February the 14th arrival date. The experiment, which is taking place in the Moscow-based laboratories of the Institute of Biomedical Problems, has allowed researchers to look at the physiological and psychological aspects of spaceflight. The knowledge gained during the study will be invaluable in developing countermeasures to deal with any unwanted side effects of human exploration missions, and will also help in astronaut selection procedures. This year sees the launch of XSat, the first experimental satellite built entirely in Singapore, on board an ISRO PSLV rocket. As Carrie-Anne now reports, the much-delayed launch is focusing the Asian tiger on other opportunities in the space industry.
When Sam Tan, Senior Parliamentary Secretary for the Ministry of Trade and Industry and Ministry of Information, Communications and the Arts, was recently speaking at a convention in Singapore, he said that as Asia emerges as a hub for space-related industries, there is great potential for Singapore to carve a key role for itself. Citing the country's well-known pro-business environment and technologically savvy workforce, he said Singapore is making investments to build a highly skilled workforce for the fledgling space industry. The Nanyang Technological University has started an undergraduate satellite programme, and other institutions are also exploring the possibility of including in their curricula elements of nanosatellite design, fabrication and other space-related topics. Mr. Tan added, Singapore was also progressing in its aim to become a leading satellite data research centre in the region, with the Centre for Remote Imaging, Sensing and Processing, CRISP, being the first in the world to receive 0.5 million resolution data from the GOI-1 and Worldview 1 and 2 satellites, currently the highest resolution civilian remote sensing satellite images available.
Thank you, Carrie-Anne. NASA managers are confident that the problems with the stringers on Discovery's external fuel tank support beams have now been fixed. John Shannon, Space Shuttle Program Manager, said that whilst it has been a long road, he was very confident the team has finally figured out the problem. Discovery will not launch on the STS-133 mission before February the 24th, but shuttle managers have not yet chosen a target date for the mission. The schedule depends in part on traffic at the ISS during that time frame. A European cargo spacecraft, ATV-2, is scheduled to launch to the station on February the 15th, carrying supplies and equipment. At the recent Casbah organised forum, Thailand in View, the country's cable and satellite TV sector was put under the spotlight. James has been looking at the figures.
The cable and satellite TV market in Thailand is currently experiencing tremendous growth as viewing households more than tripled from 2.67 million in 2007 to 9.33 million in mid-2010. By the end of 2010, the number is estimated to have risen further to over 10 million households for nearly 50% penetration. The passage of the Frequency Allocation Law late last year was the most significant occasion of the year and should lead to the long-awaited establishment of a single regulator for the broadcasting and telecom sectors. Speakers at the forum agreed that for the phenomenal growth to continue and for the industry to thrive, ethical business practices and increased transparency were needed to drive local and international investment. However, piracy continues to be a major drawback, as cable piracy and broadcast signal theft remains a major problem even in Bangkok, and especially among the hundreds of provincial pay TV operators. Casbah estimates losses to the industry in the range of $241 million due to the signal theft in 2010. This is the second highest losses in Asia, only surpassed by India.
Thank you, James. One of Russia's biggest and most ambitious projects is the creation of a new space center called Vostochny in the Amur Oblast region in the far east of the country. According to the head of Roscosmos, Anatoly Perminov, the new space center will have 2 launch pads, an airport and a developed industry. The site will also become a new city with its own transport and infrastructure. The first launch pad is planned to be put into operation in 2015, together with the first blast-offs of unmanned spacecraft. The region is ideal for space launches, as it has on average 310 clear days a year and a lack of strong winds. Currently, the only spaceport Russia has for a manned flight is Baikonur, which Russia leases from Kazakhstan at a cost of $115 million a year. The new site is primarily for civilian launches. Roscosmos plans to move 45% of Russia's space launches to Vostochny by 2020, with Plesetsk accounting for 44% and Baikonur's share dropping to 11%. And now here's Richard with more news.
Seacom Satellite Systems has received orders in excess of $1.3 million for its iNetView mobile antenna systems from its resellers in the USA, Russia, Japan, Malaysia, Thailand, China and the Middle East. The iNetView vehicle mount and flyaway antenna systems will be deployed for use by oil and gas customers, telecom providers, military and government agencies, and will be delivered in the first quarter of 2011. Spacenet has been selected to provide SkyEdge broadband satellite terminals, deployment operations and maintenance to support state lotteries. The multi-year contract awards from the past month include Texas, Illinois, while Indiana, Iowa and Louisiana were deployed earlier in 2010. The 5 networks totalling almost 33,000 lottery sites in all benefit from SkyEdge's efficient bandwidth management, security and quality of service, ideal for applications requiring higher availability and uptime such as lottery and gaming networks.
Thank you, Richard. And one final piece of news. Last week, the United States said it is going to end export restrictions for India's defence and space industries after more than a decade of sanctions. The announcement follows an assurance President Obama gave during his visit to India in November 2010. Groups to be taken off the blacklist include ISRO and the Weapon Designing, Defence Research and Development Organisation. US Commerce Secretary Gary Locke is set to visit the country with major US defence companies including Lockheed Martin and Boeing in February. Thank you for watching.